In this video, we're going to talk about measurement. I really wish y'all were in class for measurement because it's one of my favorite things to teach and one of the more fun days. Measurement is one of those topics that's actually really difficult to teach because there are so many parts to it. But I think it's also something that we have a high self-confidence in, and that might be a little bit misplaced. So hopefully through this video and doing the activities and stuff this week, you might see where you're lacking a little bit in your knowledge of measurement, and it's important to see that just so that we can, I guess, address that before you start teaching your students measurement. So starting off, a few things to think about when we talk about measurement is we want to think about what attribute do we want to measure. So if you were going to measure how tall you are, the attribute you're measuring is length or height, essentially. If you wanted to measure how much paint you needed to paint a room, the attribute you would use to measure that would be the surface area. Okay, so you're actually using area there. So depending on what you need to measure, what attribute you're measuring, you would go about that a little bit differently. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is select the unit we will use to tell us how much. Okay, so if you were figuring out how tall you are you figuring out how tall you are in feet? Are you figuring out how tall you are in inches? A combination of the two? Are we doing it in meters? Are we doing it in centimeters? Are we doing it in millimeters? Okay, so, and that's just height. Okay, we could do this with all sorts of things. If I was measuring how much water I drank this morning, or how much a cup of water is, would I measure that in I would measure that in fluid ounces, or I could measure it in cups or pints or gallons if I drank a whole bunch of water. So that's kind of, I hope you're starting to see like all the different aspects of measurement here. Okay, once you figure out what exactly we're measuring, what unit we're going to use to measure it in, then you actually measure it and figure out what device you need to use to measure it. If we're doing the length of something, we might use a ruler or a yardstick or a tape measure. If we were doing the fluid ounces, we'd have to use like a beaker or something like that. So I hope that you're kind of starting to see all the different parts of measurement. Okay, so real quick history about measurement. I actually was reading in a book this morning and saw this. So previous to now, kind of back in the day, let's see, this is like the history. I was trying to see if I knew a year. Not sure exact year, but this was the types of measurement using parts of your body. So a span was from the tip of your pinky to the tip of your thumb, so from like here to here. And then a cubit was from the tip of your middle finger to your elbow. And one thing, this is kind of hard to show on this video. Let me see if I can kind of zoom out a little bit. But one thing I read about in this book was typically a cubit is 2 spans, which I was like, nah, I don't believe that. But then once you do it, if you go from your pinky, let's see, here you go to there, that's about at my watch. And then if I go from my watch to my elbow, that's pretty much exactly 2 spans. So try that at home and see if like the tip of your pinky to your thumb, when you spread it out, if you have 2 of those. It says it's about, so it's not gonna be perfect. But that was a unit of measurement before they had specific measurements. So this was called a span. A cubit was from your tip of your middle finger to your elbow. And for most people, a span is 2 cubits. And then the length of your foot is a foot. And I read that let's see, it was right here in the book, that the actual length of Hercules' foot was what they actually used for the length of the foot. And then the French foot was based on the actual length of King Charlemagne's foot. So that was interesting. And then I also read, I'm not sure if it's here, but I also read that people using a foot, that they had actual pacers that like they would know. Here we go. It says, when Alexander the Great conquered the known world, he had professional pacers to measure how far the army had traveled so that their maps would be accurate. These pacers were trained to make each step virtually the same length regardless of the terrain, flat, uphill, downhill, etc. So I thought that was really interesting, so that their pace was exactly the same. The hand is the measurement from this side to this side. It's like the width of your hand. I actually think you put your thumb there. And that's usually about 4 inches. I'm not sure if what mine is, but about 4 inches. Mine's more like 3.5. But, and then they said a yard was about from this was, I believe, King Edgar, was from your nose to the tip of your finger. So, I don't know. I hope that's interesting to you to think about how people would measure this before. And I'm going to come back and tell you something about when we get to volume later on. Okay, so measurement. We have lots of different types of measurement. First of all, we have 2 different systems of measurement. So, the 2 different systems of measurement is the metric system. And the metric system is used worldwide. And then we also have the U.S. customary system. So, of course, the U.S. has to be different. And so this is only used in the U.S. So it's really hard for our students because they have to learn both, essentially, because there will be times that metric units are used that they need to know both the customary system and the metric system. Okay, so since they have to know both, we are going to have to do a little bit extra work in this class and with your students. So first of all, let's talk about the things we can measure, like what attributes can we measure? We can measure length. That's kind of the examples I've been giving so far. And so when you measure in length, the U.S. customary system, I'm measuring in inches. I can measure in feet. I can measure in yards. So that's the U.S. customary system. For the metric system, when you measure length, you're measuring in meters. And there are different ways to measure in meters. There's meters, centimeters, millimeters, decameters, decimeters, and we'll talk about that later. But all length for the U.S., for the metric system is, I didn't bring another color, is measured in meters. So this is metric. Okay, so length, that's length, height, width, anything that we're measuring that you can use a ruler to measure. Okay, so the next thing let's talk about is weight. This is also called mass sometimes. Okay, so if I'm measuring weight, if I'm measuring it in the U.S. customary system, I'm measuring in ounces, in pounds, in tons. Okay, if I'm measuring in the metric system, I'm measuring it in grams. So all weight is measured in grams. Okay. Next thing, if I am measuring in volume, or if I want to measure the volume. Okay, so volume it could be fluid or it could be dry. Like wet or dry, we use the same measurements for it. Pretty much the same measurements for it. Okay, so for the U.S. customary system, we have teaspoons, which you usually see with a little t or TSP. Tablespoon, which you see with a big T, TBS, tablespoon. Pulling that off the top of my head. It has a P on it. There we go. That looks better. Tablespoon. We can also measure in cups. We can measure in pints. We can measure in quarts. We can measure in fluid ounces. Gallons, so on and so forth. The metric version of volume is liters. Okay, and then we have 2 other things. We can measure time. Thankfully, time is measured the same no matter where you're at. Okay, so we can measure time in seconds. We can measure time in minutes. We can measure time in hours. We can measure time in days, weeks, months, years, so on and so forth. Okay, and then the last thing we can measure is temperature. We can actually measure more things, but these are the main ones we're going to focus on. And temperature is measured in degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius. Celsius is the metric system. What everybody else uses except for the U.S. Okay, so just from that, I hope that you see how measurement is a huge idea for our students. It's something that they're learning from day one. Okay, so a kindergartner obviously is not measuring in terms of meters and grams and liters, so on and so forth. But we have to introduce the beginning of measurement in kindergarten so that every year we can add on so that by the time they're out of the school system, they can definitely understand how to measure any length in any type of measurement, any weight in any type of measurement, any volume in any type of measurement, so on and so forth. Okay, and obviously the older they get, they're going to start converting in between inches and meters and ounces and grams and so on and so forth. Okay, so if we were in class right now, we would do all kinds of measurements activities. We'd measure our hands, we'd measure our height, we'd measure the table, we'd measure in centimeters and millimeters and meters and yards and inches. We would do all kinds of measurement. Unfortunately, we cannot do that together. So what I have for you, I want you to do this measurement activity because I want you to kind of be aware of how much you understand measurement. I think a lot of us think that we know how to measure, but when we go to measure in centimeters or millimeters, we're like, oh, I'm not quite sure. We actually bought these brand new rulers. They've never been used. We bought them for you this semester, and you can't even use them, which is sad, but that's okay. So you need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you need to see if you can find one. Go out and buy one. You need a ruler. You could get away with it for a couple days, but you're going to for sure at least need it by your exam. So you got to get a ruler. Okay, this is an essential. Go get you a ruler. And the ruler you have, it needs to measure in inches on one side. It also needs to measure in centimeters, and centimeters also measures in millimeters. So let's kind of talk about that. When we measure, let's start off with inches. When we measure in inches, this one's actually, here it measures to 1/32 of an inch, but most rulers just have this where it measures in 16ths of an inch. So let me kind of show you. Let me zoom in. If you'll notice, let me focus. There we go. If you notice that there are 16 pieces in between 1 and 2, like 16 spots, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So when you're measuring, if I had let me draw a line segment that's this long. Okay, so I'm measuring from, oh, I made it a little bit too long. Let me try again. Let me draw a smaller line segment from here to here. Okay, I am not going to start at 0. Usually you start at 0. This one, it's kind of hard with this one to read this, so I'm going to start right here at 2, and just pretend like this is 0 and this is 1. So this is a number less than 1 inch because it's in between 2 and 3 inches, right? So when I go to measure it ends right here at this line right here. So if I'm trying to figure out what that line right there is, I would count 16ths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 16ths. Okay, so this would be 13 16ths. Let me zoom out a little bit now. So this is 13 16ths. Okay, if this landed on a fraction that would reduce, if it was like 1/16 less, that would be 12 16ths, which reduces to 3/4. And if you'll notice, that's 3/4. That's a half. The longest line down is a half. Zoom back in. This long line is a half, so 2, 2 1/2, 3. The next longest line is fourths, so this is 2 1/4. 2/4 is a half. 3/4, a whole. And then the next longest, not the shortest, but the second shortest would be, these are eighths. Okay, and then the shortest would be 16ths. So if that's really hard for you to read a ruler that way, just count up your 16ths. Each little line is 1/16. So you can count up 1/16, 2/16, 3/16, 4/16, and reduce it, and that's 1/4. Okay, so when you're measuring in inches, you need to make sure you round to the nearest 16th of an inch. So like if I was measuring that piece right there, I wouldn't say, it's about 1 inch. I want to see it's 13 16ths of an inch. Okay. Measuring in centimeters. When you flip your ruler over, this says centimeters. This is 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters, so on and so forth. So when I go to measure this one, wow, look, that's convenient. It is exactly 3 centimeters. You saw me draw that line. I didn't mean to make it like that, but it is exactly 3 centimeters. So you can see that I started at 0. There's 1, there's 2, exactly 3 centimeters. Okay, so this is exactly, I should put inches here also. And this is 3 centimeters. Okay, if it was a little bit wasn't exactly 3. Let me draw something that might not be exactly a perfect amount. There we go, that's better. And it's kind of a big line. That's okay. So when I go to draw, or when I go to measure this, this is, my line's really, really big here, so it's kind of hard to see, but let me focus. I start at 0, okay, and I'm up 4 and 1, 2, it looks like about, you could say 2 or 3. Okay, there are 10 lines on centimeters in between each number, so this would be like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, or 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. So I would say this is 4, and you could argue 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, because my line's so big. So I'm just going to say it is 4 and 3/10, or 4.3 centimeters. Okay. So that's how you measure in centimeters. For millimeters, let me draw a different, and try to do a little better job of not making it such a big line. For millimeters, millimeters are each line in between here. So if you're going to measure in millimeters here, sorry if this is like making you nauseous with me moving this back and forth so much. My camera work isn't great here. But if you're measuring in millimeters, this is 1 millimeter, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 millimeters is 1 centimeter. So 2 would be 20 millimeters, 30 millimeters, 40 millimeters, 50 millimeters. Okay, so when you go to measure this, that's a little better. This is 10, 20, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 34 millimeters. Okay, if you measured that in centimeters, it'd be 3.4 centimeters. Okay, I hope that's helpful to help you understand how to measure in millimeters, centimeters, and inches using a ruler. So for your activity that you're going to do at home, this is under the document section. Click on it and it should open it up. This is a measurement activity. So again, if we were here, I would give you all the same thing for us to measure so we could all come up with the same answer. Unfortunately, that's not an option. So I have a few things I want you to do. So I want you to take a picture of your measurement, like with your ruler, because your pen might be smaller than my pen. Okay, so I just need to make sure that you know how to measure. So it says insert a picture of the measurement of each object, also include your answer. So I wanted to measure a pen in centimeters. So if you'll notice, I put a pen on a piece of paper. I put my ruler up against it. You can see I started at 0. This was a different ruler than the one I've been using. Started at 0, ends at 14. So my answer was 14 centimeters. Okay, so again, if it's helpful, I went ahead and uploaded this as a PDF document so you could see exactly like spacing, no matter if you have a Word or a Mac, not a Word, a Mac or a Windows PC. Not Windows, just a Mac or a PC, sorry. So the PDF document so that you can see it exactly like this, but I also included a Word document so that you could edit it and put in your pictures. So I want you to do the same thing. Give me the measurement of a pen in inches. So this time you're going to use the inches side of your ruler with whatever pen you're using, measure it, take a picture. Like I want to see this picture on your paper. So like if you take a picture and then like copy and paste that picture onto the Word document, you can like resize it here and then you can write your answer here. So I need your pictures on here. If you need more technology help of how to do that, I'd be more than happy to give you some more instructions. But basically, just take a picture, email it to yourself, copy and paste the picture into this Word document. So you have the front of giving the measurement of a pen. If you don't have a pen, you can use a pencil. I don't really care. Rounded in inches to the nearest 1/16 inch. And on the back, do the same pen, but do it in millimeters. You can do a different pen if you want to. It's up to you. And then for number 3, the measurement of your hand from the wrist crease, so from like this crease right here, to the top of your middle finger, not including your fingernails. If you got those big old long fingernails, don't include those. Just go to like the skin top of your fingernail. I want you to do it in centimeters and inches. So for this one, you may like take a picture, let me zoom out a little bit. You may take a picture like this, in inches. So showing it starts at the crease. So you might take a picture like that and put it in there. You could also, I guess if you wanted to, you could do it like this. I don't really care. I just need to be able to see your measurement so that I can check and make sure that you are doing your measurements correctly. And again, this is centimeters and inches, so there's 2 answer blanks here. So do this activity. It's just basically a participation grade for doing it, but I am going to go ahead and when I grade it, you'll just get 100 for doing it, but I will put in the comments if you messed up on your measurement, just kind of showing you how to do the measurement a little bit better. Okay, so this is due as part of an activity for the week, and then you also have homework on top of this. This isn't your homework. This is just to make sure you know how to measure. Okay, so I wish we had more time. I wish we were all together to do more measurement stuff, but hopefully that is sufficient for now. But the next thing I wanted to talk about was converting. And again, our conversions here aren't from inches to meters. Our conversions are within the customary system or within the metric system. Okay? So when you are converting measurements, the big thing you have to think about here, there's a few different ways to do this. If you've been in chemistry, you've probably done it differently. It's up to you how you want to do it. It doesn't really matter. It's really honestly up to your school district, how your school district wants you to teach it. But one way that it's taught is if you're going from a big measurement to a little measurement, you need to multiply. If you're going from a little measurement to a big measurement, you need to divide. Oh, and one more thing I guess I need to show you is all of our conversions. So I also have attached this conversion chart. So within the customary system, 12 inches is 1 foot, 3 feet is 1 yard. I expect for you to know those for sure. This one you might not know off the top of your head, but hopefully after this lesson you will know it a little bit better. 5,280 feet is 1 mile. For weight, 16 ounces is 1 pound, and 2,000 pounds is 1 ton. Over here, time. 60 seconds is a minute, 60 minutes is the same as 1 hour. There's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 52 weeks in a year, 12 months in a year, 365 days in a year. The number of days in each month is different based on your months. Okay, so January has 31 days, February has 28, on leap year is 29, so on and so forth. Okay, volume, 3 teaspoons is 1 tablespoon, and 16 tablespoons is 1 cup. 2 cups is a pint. 2 pints is a quart, 4 quarts is a gallon, and there's 8 fluid ounces in 1 cup. So this is one, I really struggle with the volume one, to be completely honest. I know the teaspoons and tablespoons because I do that all the time. But thinking about cups to pints and pints to quarts and quarts to gallon, I really struggle with it. Some people have your little gallon man. If you've seen a picture of that, you can look that up. But the gallon man has like a picture of like cups and pints and quarts. I actually read this today, and this was very interesting. So this is what 18th century school children learned for the units. So there are some measurements in here that we do not use anymore, but 2 mouthfuls are a jigger. So we're talking about like measuring like liquid. So 2 mouthfuls of something is a jigger. 2 jiggers are a jack. 2 jacks are a jill. 2 jills are a cup. So now we're getting to something we know, a cup. 2 cups are a pint. 2 pints are a quart. Those are all things we know. And this is the jump because you know how here 4 quarts is a gallon. It has an extra, extra thing in here. Where's it at? So 2 pints are a quart. 2 quarts are a pottle. 2 pottles are a gallon. 2 gallons are a pail. 2 pails are a peck. 2 pecks are a bushel. 2 bushels are a strike. So these are all things we don't know anymore. But I just thought it was interesting that they had a measurement in between, where's it at? In between quarts and gallons. It was a pottle. I don't know what a pottle is, but this helps my head see the reason why this is all 2 cups in a pint, 2 pints in a quart. The reason why it's 4 quarts in a gallon is because technically it was 2 quarts in a pottle and then 2 pottles in a gallon. So it's like there was a measurement in between here. So you just need to know these measurements, especially for conversions. So let's do some conversions within the customary system. Again, the idea going from big to little. So going from a big measurement, from feet, to a little measurement, 2 inches. To go from feet to inches, we would multiply by 12. And that should make sense because you have if you're going to a smaller measurement, you should have more of it. To go from little to big, we're going to divide. Okay, so to go from inches to feet, I would divide by 12 there. So let's do some conversions. Okay, so if I wanted to know, let's start off pretty simple. So 1 foot is how many inches? Well, in this case, we are going from, all right, let's see if there's another pen in here. Going from feet is a bigger measurement, inches is a little smaller measurement, so we need to multiply by the number of feet in inches. Nope, the number of inches in a foot, which would be 12, and 1 times 12 is 12. So if we had a bigger problem, 7 feet equals how many inches? Same idea, still multiply by 12, and 7 times 12 is 84. So 7 feet is 84 inches. Okay, what about if we went the opposite way? 12 inches is how many feet? Well, this is a smaller measurement. This is a bigger measurement, so I need to divide. So I'm going to divide by 12 here. And again, this 12 is because there are 12 inches in a foot on both of these problems. Well, all the time, but we're talking about inches and feet here. Okay, so 12 divided by 12 is 1, so my answer is 1 foot. If I had 48 inches, how many feet does that make? Well, I need to still divide by 12, and 48 divided by 12 is 4 feet. Okay, so again, if I was going from, let's say, 3 miles is how many feet? Well, miles is a bigger measurement, feet is a smaller measurement, so I need to multiply by a number. So the number I multiply by is how many feet are in a mile. That's like from your chart, 5,280 feet in a mile. Okay, and so 3 times 5,280 is, on the calculator, if you type it in, you get 15,840 feet. Okay, so those are ones that are just a one-step conversion. Let's do some that are not one-step conversions. So let's do 2 miles equals how many inches? Okay, I do not know how many inches are in a mile. Okay, I know how many feet are in a mile, and I know how many inches are in a foot, so this is a 2-step conversion process. So first, let's turn miles into feet, and then once we have it in feet, then we can turn it into inches. So 2 miles into feet. Miles is a bigger measurement, feet is a smaller measurement, so I need to multiply. I'm going to multiply by 5,280. And 2 miles is 560. Okay, so now that I have it in feet, then I can go to inches. So 10,560 feet, I want to turn into inches. Well, still multiplying here. There are 12 inches in 1 foot, so I'm going to multiply by 12. And 10,560 times 12 is 126,720 inches. Okay, so sometimes you need to convert twice or take 2 steps to convert. In this case, we went from miles to feet and then from feet to inches. Okay, let's do a gallons and a cups one. This would be number 5. So if I had 3 gallons, I want to figure out how many cups that is. Okay, so first, if you look at your measurement or your chart, gallons, I don't know how many of anything's in a gallon, but I do know that there's 4 quarts in a gallon. I know there's 2 pints in a quart, so I need to go from gallons, 2 quarts, 2 pints, and then 2 cups from there. Okay, so starting off with 3 gallons, I need to turn into quarts first. To turn it into quarts, this is a bigger measurement, this is a smaller measurement, so I'm going to multiply by a number. The number I multiply by, there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon, so I'm going to multiply by 4. 3 times 4 is 12. So we're at 12 quarts now. So now, if I have 12 quarts, I'm trying to get to cups, I need to turn it into pints next. There are 2 pints in a quart, so I need to multiply this by 2, and I get 24 pints now. And then now that I'm at pints, there are 24 pints. I'm trying to get to cups, and there are 2 cups in 1 pint. So I'm going to multiply by 2, and 24 times 2 is 48 cups in a gallon. Okay, let's do one going the other way. If I have 160 tablespoons, here the measurement says TBL. I'm literally trying to think of my tablespoons like that I have at home. I'm pretty sure it says TBS on it. So just the capital T and a B is what's for sure in it. Don't worry about what's after it. It could be multiple different things. I'll go ahead and use what's on the chart though, TBL. Okay, so tablespoons. I want to turn this into, how many pints is that? Okay, so to turn tablespoons into pints, first I got to get from tablespoons to cups, and then I can go cups to pints. Okay, so 160 tablespoons to cups first. Tablespoon is a smaller measurement than a cup, so this time I need to divide by a number, not multiply. I'm going from little to big here. So there are 16 tablespoons in 1 cup, so I need to divide by 16. So 160 divided by 16 is 10 cups. And then now 10 cups is, we're going to pints. Okay, so there are 2 cups in 1 pint, so I need to divide this by 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 5 pints is where we're at. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with the customary ones. We could do this all day, right? Because there are tons and tons and tons of problems. You will have some problems like this on your homework. That's with customary. I'm going to make a different video with the metric conversions, just because this video is kind of a little bit long. Before I do that, I did want to talk about what measurement looks at. We talked about how you got to do measurement every single year with every single student, just so that they know what's going on and can build on top of it, because there's so much to learn here. So in kindergarten, you are not measuring in meters and grams and liters. You're not even really measuring in inches and feet and yards. Instead, you're measuring with hand lengths. How many hand lengths is this piece of paper? 1, 2, or about 2. You also can measure in, sorry, I had to go grab them, these little cubes like this. You remember these? If we were in class, we would have done some problems measuring in snap cubes. We like measuring in snap cubes because, let me put some together. Like, if you say this pen is, I'm trying to do this quickly and not waste all your time doing this. If this pen is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're going to say it's 13 snap cubes. If you'll notice, here, if I go on this side, well, I can't measure, I can't show it very well. But if you'll notice, you probably can't see it very well, but it's also about 13 centimeters. And the reason why is because this is a centimeter. They're actually called centimeter cubes. It's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So we can measure, here, that's a little bit easier to see, 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. So we can measure, like kindergartners can measure in centimeters super duper easy without even realizing it, because this length is 13 centimeters about. Obviously it's not perfect because I don't have it all put together, but it's about 13 centimeters. So that's one way to start measuring in kindergarten and first grade, is measuring how many hand lengths is this, how many centimeter cubes, how many paper clips. So a non-customary way of measuring something without a ruler, so that they can learn how to start at one point and end at another point. I think my daughter even had a little pretend ruler that had like flowers. It was like the width of each flower, and how many flowers long is this? So it doesn't matter. It's more just teaching them how to measure a length based on whatever you give them. So that's kind of how you start with measurement, and then you start building up past that, like learning inches and centimeters and all that sort of thing. Okay, so you will get your next video on the conversions with the metric system, and then you will be ready to work on your homework for the week.